Welcome to video lecture. I'm Shobha from School of Management. In today's class, we are going to learn generally accepted accounting principles, usually which we call it as a GAAP. So GAPs are the very basic foundation on which the entire accounting system has been built. So GAAP will help us to understand how exactly the recording of the business transaction and the closure of the business transaction takes place. GAAP, or generally accepted accounting principles, are the set of standards or the norms, or we can say it as a rules, which are going to govern the accounting profession. So whether I am a student or I am a teacher or I am into the accounting profession or I am an institution, if I am going to maintain the books of accounts, then I should be following these set of standards or the rules. So likewise, every country has its own GAAP. For example, in India, the accounting standards, we call it as an Indian GAAP. Likewise, US has its own GAAP. We call it as a US GAAP, UK GAAP, or Pakistan has its own GAAP, like set of rules which is adopted while maintaining a books of account. We call it as a their country GAAP. We call it as a local GAAP. These gaps are going to bring more similarity the way that accounts are going to be kept. So this facilitates us for the comparing our accounting information, and also where is there into the accounting profession or learning the accounting or analyzing the financial statements can easily follow these set of rules and regulations and understand what these accounts or the set of books speaks about. So gaps are the pillars on which the entire structure of accounting is built upon. So when we are into the accounting profession, so we need to be following all these accounting principles. So these principles can be reflected in three forms. One is the accounting concept, then accounting conventions, and the accounting standards. So let us understand each of these concepts individually so that we have a better clarity what this gap is all about. This slides gives us the list of the accounting concept and conventions. So each of these concepts and conventions are practically used and implemented. So we will be discussing each of this concept individually. So accounting concepts are nothing but they are the basic assumptions, right? Before we should start proceeding with recording the business transactions, we need to believe some conditions or we need to make some assumptions. So based on the assumption, each and every entry in the accounting takes place. So this concept we can also refer it as an idea or the notions, and these concepts have got the universal application. We all need to assume these things or these conditions for irrespective of the size of the business or place of the business. Accounting entity or separate entity concept believes that business has a separate existence from the person who owns it. So owner is different from the business. Even the owner has invested his or her hard-earned money and taken a risk to start the business, any transaction happens between the business and the owner, we don't mix it, we separate it. For example, if the owner is in need of money, if he or she is taking money from the business, we record it as the drawings or the withdrawals. So whenever any business events happen between the businessman and the business, we separate it. For example, when money is invested by the owner, we show it as a capital. Whenever cash is withdrawn from the business, we show it as a drawings. If the withdrawal is in the form of goods, we show it as a drawings in the form of the goods. So separating the business transactions from the personal transaction, we call it as a separate entity concept. Then the next concept is a money measurement concept. So under this concept, we should be recording those business transactions or the events which can be measurable in terms of money. So if any business transaction or the event, if you're not able to quantify it or measure in terms of money, those transactions will not find place in the accounting records. So this beliefs makes us that any event which is going to be recorded in a books of account should be measurable in terms of money. The next concept is going concern concept. So under this concept, we believe or we assume that business will have a long life. It means the business has indefinite period or survival. So we don't believe that I'm running a business, it may be of 1 week or 1 month, right? We don't assume the end period of the business existence. So we believe that business has a long life, it will continue for the long period. So this assumption will help us to categorize the expenses into short term and long term, or categorize any of the business event into the short term as well as a long term. The next assumption is the cost concept. So under this, whenever we record a purchase of asset or any equipment, we record based on the historical cost. Means the cost that we incurred to buy an equipment. We don't take the estimated prices or the future imaginary figures. So any event has to be recorded. It should be based on the cost incurred for it or expenses incurred for it. So that is called as a cost concept. Next is a dual aspect concept. So this dual aspect concept is very important, and this concept we know in the form of double entry bookkeeping. As we know that any business transaction or event happens, there are two kind of effects which will happen on the business. So those twofold effects we call it as a debit and credit. So any business transaction happens, there will be a two aspects. One is a benefit giving and another is a benefit receiving. So when a recording takes place, so from that records, we should be considering both the aspects and recording it. Next one is the accounting period concept. As we know that if the investment is done on a business and it's performing, so we'll be eager to know its performance, that is a financial performance. So there should be accounting period or the ending period where we can close the books of account and find out how the business is performing. So that is called as the accounting period concept. So usually the accounting period is broken into some time span, that is it can be annually or it can be half yearly or it can be quarterly. So that is called as the accounting period concept. Means what is the right time to find out what is a profit or loss or what is a financial position. Then comes matching concept. So under this matching concept, we should be like looking into that our revenues are going to be matched with the expenses. We cannot match our expenses to the revenue, right? So we should be matching the revenue realized with the expenses that we are going to incur for the given period of time. Hope you all understood the accounting concept. They are the basic assumptions. We should be assuming it or believing it. Now, we will be discussing about the accounting conventions. So, accounting conventions are also part of the Indian GAAP. So, these conventions are nothing but the customs and the traditions. We should be following it, and these are traditions are the guiding principles for us preparing, maintaining the books of account and preparing the accounting statement. So first accounting convention is with regarding to the consistency. So this convention tells or guides us that the methodology that we have adopted while recording some of the business transactions will remain consistent. So there should not be often change in the method of or the procedure that we follow while recording the business transactions. So this uniformity in the methodology or consistency in the method will bring or will helps us to compare our present data with the previous data. So here, for example, when we account or when we calculate a depreciation, there are different methods to calculate. So when we have adopted a particular method, for example, reducing balance method is a way of depreciation. If our organization is adopting, then we should be consistent with the reducing balance method only. This method only we should be adopting it in future accounting period also. And also there are different methods of finding the cost of raw material or the stock registers. So there are also different methods of followed to find out the cost of raw material. So there also we should be using a particular method and we should be consistent with regarding to the adoption of that particular methodology so that the uniformity in the recording takes place and comparison will give you the proper results, right? Interpretation and comparison can be done properly only when we have a consistency with regarding to the methods that we adopted in recording some of the transactions like the depreciation or finding the cost of inventory. Convention of conservatism. So this convention guide us that we should always be anticipating the probable losses but not the profits. So this basic convention helps us and guides us that there can be the unfavorable or unforeseen conditions which can put trouble to our business. So always we should anticipate that future there can be the losses or some of the events which can bring loss or disturbance to the business. So with this assumption or with this uh, guiding principle, always we should be keeping some reserve for the future unexpected events. For example, whenever we sell a goods on a credit basis, always we anticipate that there can be the doubtful debts or there can be the bad debts because there will be the doubt that the 100% sales that we do it on a credit basis, we may not recover 100%. There can be the bad or the doubtful debts. So with this basic guiding principle, always we will provide a provision for the doubtful debts. Convention of materiality guides us that only the material event should be recorded in a books of account. We should not be wasting our time or wasting the investors or the people who are going to use our books of account should not be wasting their time focusing on the immaterial events or immaterial items which are recorded in a books of account. So recording only those events which we feel that yes, they have a material impact on the profitability or the financial position. So only the material items are going to find a place in the books of account. The next one is a convention of full and fair disclosure. So under this, we should be recording complete information and providing a full information if any particular event is not found place in the accounts or in the financial statement. At least there should be the disclosure which happens along with our financial statement because we believe that those events can have a material impact on the future financial performance. So whenever any books of accounts are maintained, recorded, or disclosed to the outside world, there should be full and fair disclosure. So, to wrap up, in today's discussion, we learned GAAP. So, GAAP is nothing but generally accepted accounting principles. Every country has its own local GAAP, local accounting standards. We call it as a GAAP. In India, we call it as the Indian GAAP. This GAAP consists of accounting concepts and the conventions. So concepts are the basic assumptions or the beliefs, whereas the conventions are the guiding principles, or we can say they are the customs or the traditions which we will be following. With this, I'm going to conclude. Hope this video is going to help you to understand what are the accounting concept and conventions. Thank you for watching.